48-14, and yeah, it wasn't even that close. Panthers swept by the Bucs this season. Julian Council of Locked On Panthers joins me. Julian, we can save the quarterback talk for later because Bryce Young, he was solid like he's been lately, but we have a franchise record now. The defense has allowed 496 points this year, worse than Panthers history. They did so in regulation, 16 games. We know the roster is going to change. Will the defensive coordinator be back next year?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I guess really the question is it reasonable to bring back someone who has overseen the worst defense in franchise history? And Nick, this happened with 6 quarters remaining in the season. They didn't even need the second half of the Tampa game to go out there and give up the 496 yards after having 470 as the franchise low before. And if they give up 38 next week against Atlanta, that will break the NFL record, which currently is set at 533 points. If Ejiro Evero had not been kept here in Carolina by David Tepper, then retained by Dave Canales once he became the head coach, he would have had a market. Could have potentially been the Green Bay Packers defensive coordinator or Los Angeles Rams DC. So he is someone who would be coveted if he's available in the market this upcoming January. But you have to ask yourself, can you bring back somebody who has overseen the worst defense in franchise history? And of understanding there's been injuries, like J.C. Horn did not play on Sunday, but of course, Derek Brown has only played 1 game this season. Shaq Thompson's been out for the majority of the season. Josie Jewell's missed plenty of time. Jordan Fuller, who's second straight week of a healthy scratch, he's missed a large majority of the season. Dane Jackson as well. Players that were supposed to be key figures on this defense have not been available. So how could you reasonably expect this to be a good defense? But did you expect it to be the worst defense in the NFL? Probably not. So you have to ask the question that whether it can be reasonable for him to come back next year, considering the circumstances this season, whether they're in his control or out of his control. It's been the worst defense in franchise history, and that has to be considered.
Yeah, coaching versus personnel. They'll certainly have a chance to improve personnel in the draft, likely with a top 10 pick. Do you think interior D-line, edge rusher, what's your preference? What's your flavor if you had the choice?
Well, they've been terrible against the run. This is the 5th straight game they've given up 200-plus yards on the ground, and it was not surprising considering that a couple weeks ago, this same Tampa Bay Buccaneers team did that to them in that overtime win here in Charlotte. Looking at Atlanta next week, would not be surprised by a Falcons team that wants to run the ball if they're also able to do that. So, yeah, I would think that defensive tackle would make sense. Of course, Derek Brown coming back next year fully healthy, that would help things. A'Shawn Robinson's probably been the best of their defensive linemen this season, but still he has not been one of the higher graded players in the NFL according to Pro Football Focus. So I would think that would make sense. But also on the edge, it's not like Carolina has been great at getting after the passer. I believe Robinson leads them in sacks this season. Since DJ Williams come in, he's actually had a lot of pressures, but it has not necessarily led to a ton of sacks. Jadeveon Clowney only had his 4.5 sack on Sunday, and that's somebody who was seen as a marquee free agent. He's making a lot of money to not necessarily make that big of an impact off the edge as far as getting after the passer. So you can't really go wrong if you're Carolina defensively when looking at both those spots. But I'll even look at the secondary. J.C. Horn's coming back next year on the 5th-year option. I would think it'd be wise for them to extend him this offseason, but you're losing your top 3 safeties. Nick Scott, he's going to be a free agent after this year. Jordan Fuller, who, again, was a healthy scratch for the 2nd straight week, he's going to be gone. Xavier Woods is also a free agent. Damani Richardson has been impressive as a UDFA out of Texas A&M, so maybe he comes back in a starting role, but they need to address that position and probably figure out who's going to be the long-term option opposite of JC, as Mike Jackson has played there pretty well so far this season, but there's still a lot that can be fixed in the secondary, just not up front.
Special teams was an absolute mess. Bucks blocked the punt and score while the camera was fixated on the duck. And Eddie Pinheiro's try at the end of that first half, he's had some ducks. He had the leg on this. It was way left. I mean, he's been shaky the last couple of weeks. Is he back next year? There was a competition in the preseason with him.
Yeah, we'll see. And I'm curious about how healthy he is. I know he popped up on the injury report following the game winner in Munich, and he had a knee injury that was suffered from that celebration. He has not been on the injury report the last couple of weeks. And that does not mean that he's having something that's nagging him, as all these guys now 17 weeks, 16 games into the season are not 100% healthy. And he's missed 3 field goals and 2 extra points over the last 5 weeks. And he has gone from being, I guess, technically the most accurate kicker in the NFL, even though, let's understand, there's been far greater kickers in the history of the league other than Eddie Pinheiro, but he's somebody who Carolina's got to look long and hard at whether they want to give him a new deal and also have to see what their options are. There's not a lot of good kickers in the league, and you want to put yourself in a situation they were in a couple years ago where they were going from Joey Sly and then trying to figure out that one Giants kicker who they had traded for about a week before getting rid of him, and then Zane Gonzalez finally figured out to be the guy before he got injured, and then, of course, Eddie Pinheiro now being here here in Carolina. So I think he should be somebody that's back. We have to certainly hope that he can be healthy moving forward in the future, and that maybe see if that's what's been ailing him over the last month and a half.
Much ado about Xavier Legette again. 9 targets, just 5 catches. A lot of these were tough. Are people just looking at some of the ones on Sunday in Tampa and adding them into what he's kind of put on tape in the past, or should he have had some of these too?
Yeah, I do think it's cumulative as far as how people are looking at him. You look back at the Eagles game, that was a potential game-winning touchdown that he dropped. You look at a couple other games this season, like Cincinnati as well. He catches those balls. Maybe Carolina goes on to win that game back in week 4. So he's not necessarily been I don't think he's been unimpressive, but he's not necessarily, I guess, lived up to the first-round billing so far early on. Now, he's been much better than what Jonathan Mingo provided last year as a second-round pick, and he wasn't too many spots behind where Legette was taken. And understand, if Carolina didn't trade up with Buffalo and the relationship there with Brandon Beane, the GM in Buffalo, with Dan Morgan, the GM here in Carolina was going to take him in the second round. And does that potentially lessen the expectations? I don't know, but he's somebody who I certainly wasn't the biggest fan of during the draft process after he spent 5 years in Columbia, and it took until the final season. He's not going to have 5 years in Carolina to finally break out and to be that marquee kind of player. Now, of course, they traded up to get that 5th-year option. I don't know. I mean, I think there's guys out there like Ladd McConkey, fans who probably didn't even want Ladd McConkey or know who he was back during the draft, and now talking about why didn't they go draft him, because he was drafted after Xavier Legette. So I still think he can be a solid piece for this team. I just don't think he's ever going to be that A1, that top tier kind of receiver that you would hope you're getting in the first round.
Julian, Bryce Young, 2 first-half touchdown passes, a couple of other really good throws. And according to Next Gen Stats, he did that against the highest pressure an NFL quarterback has faced all year. What have you made of Bryce's blitz beating this second half of the season?
Yeah, no, he's handled with poise, whether it's just been staying in the pocket, knowing he's going to get nailed and throwing some of those throws of anticipation and really finding guys down the field and some great throws. I'd love to see that. A lot that we saw from Bryce back at Alabama and throughout the pre-draft process that led Carolina to drafting him #1 overall. And the fact that also he's been able to get out of the pocket. I know he had a hamstring injury that popped up late on in the week, but still didn't seem like that was something that hampered him in this game today. His ability to be able to get out of the pocket, make some plays, extend plays, that's stuff that we saw that led him to be #1 overall pick. And it's been really impressive to see Bryce Young getting back to the old Bryce and the Bryce we had not seen yet here in Carolina. And he certainly does not appear to be the biggest issue after early on this season. It felt like he was the issue in Carolina.
He's clearly earned 2025. So what should this front office's plan be to help him some more?
Yeah, I think he's earned 2025. I still cannot get it out of my mind. Dave Canales going up there every single week and saying that Andy Dalton gave him the best opportunity to win, and Andy Dalton was prepared to start against not against Cincinnati, but against the Denver Broncos, and had he not gotten in that car accident, where are we? We'll always wonder that, but the best thing for the organization was eventually getting Bryce Young in there and seeing Bryce Young play the way that he's played. So assuming, and I would imagine it's going to be the case, he comes back in 2025, got to go back to receiver. I think they need to add more pieces. I understand they drafted Legette in the spring. They brought in Jalen Coker. He's been able to make some plays. Of course, JT Sanders, who only received 1 target and has not necessarily been a big part of the offense since that neck injury in that first half against KC out of the bye. I understand they have some young guys that they can work around with Bryce, and then Adam Thielen could be back next year. But I look at the market like T. Higgins, the game he had on Saturday and that must win against Cincinnati, probably had a lot of teams in the league salivating about the opportunity for him to be a free agent if Cincinnati lets him out of the building this upcoming March. Like, that would be the guy I'm looking at to come in here and be the #1. And then I'd still try to find another veteran, whether you bring back Thielen or not. You cannot just be satisfied with some of these young guys like Legette and like Coker when your quarterback is entering into a critical year 3, where after next season, they're going to have to decide whether they want to potentially extend Bryce Young, but certainly exercise the 5th-year option on his first-round contract. And you can't do that by throwing out the same receiving core you have this year. And you got to add some more talent, whether that's via the draft, but I really think they got to add some more veteran talent out there. And T. Higgins is the guy I'm looking at that could potentially help elevate things around Bryce. Then offensive line-wise, there's questions. Taylor Moton, what they want to do with his contract after the season. Center, who's going to be a long-term option there. Will Cade Mays get the position next year? Or will Austin Court be able to come back? Then left tackle, Ike Ekwonu had kind of another rough day, and there's some options potentially in the draft if they want to go that direction, maybe free agency. So there's still some questions up there, but really, I think they need to go out there and focus on getting him some more playmakers this offseason and not just sitting idly by and hoping that some of these young guys grow into what they want them to be next year.
All right, so Bryce will be back. Do they bring Andy Dalton back? Is it worth taking a flyer on a younger quarterback that's out there to even push this a little bit more until Bryce really solidifies that franchise quarterback role?
Yeah, I don't think it would be a bad thing necessarily if Andy wants to come back. Got to understand it's a two-way street always in those situations. I do think they could benefit from having a younger quarterback who could potentially, I mean, you don't want to say necessarily push Bryce, but have somebody that you like potentially, I don't know, I'm not saying long term, but that's somebody you would rather have starting a couple more games than Andy Dalton did this past season. So I would kind of want to go younger potentially. But if Andy Dalton is somebody who wants to come back next year and they feel good about that situation, I wouldn't be against that at all.
Julian, it took us until week 17 to really dive into the draft. I think that's kind of good considering we could have probably started doing it after week 2.
Week 1.
I'm sure we'll do it again next week. Julian Council from Locked On Panthers. Thanks for joining us.